Welcome to Documentaries of Japan. In this series, we bring you prestigious award-winning programs produced by broadcasters across Japan. Today, a report from Shizuoka Broadcasting System about a World War II battle that is long over but not forgotten. Near the end of the war, an island far south of the mainland Iwo, widely known around the world as Iwo Jima, became a fierce battlefield between Japanese and American forces. Some 27,000 people died in the conflict, Japanese and Americans. In 2006, film director Clint Eastwood produced 2 movies about the bloody battle. This is the story of one of the few Japanese soldiers who survived in captivity. Here is Message from a Japanese Soldier, first aired in May 2009.
In 1945, a Japanese soldier gave a photograph to an American soldier on Iwo, the site of one of the bloodiest battles of World War II. The Japanese soldier identified himself as Taizo Sakai. It was not until December 2008 that the photograph returned to its homeland.
Hi! I'm Stephen Lopardo. Hello.
The Japanese government had found Sakai's family. Upon learning the news, the son of the American soldier came to Japan to return the photo to the family.
This is the original photograph of Taizo, Sumiko, the niece, given by Taizo Sakai to my father.
This is Emiko Suzuki, Sakai's niece. She's the little girl in the picture.
This picture I watched, it was very nostalgic. It was really nostalgic. I didn't expect to come back to my home, so really, thank you very much.
More than 6 decades after the end of the war, the photo is finally back home. Some 1,250 kilometers south of Tokyo, in the Pacific Ocean, lies an island called Iwo, also known as Iwo Jima. It measures just 8 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. Yet this small island was once a fierce battlefield. On February 19, 1945, American troops landed on Iwo. The battle that raged for the next 36 days resulted in a total loss of nearly 27,000 human lives. It was in the heat of that battle that this photo was given by one soldier to another. Some 2 hours by car from Los Angeles.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Fallbrook.
Thank you.
Please come in.
We
Thank you
visited
for coming
Steve
now.
Lopardo
All the way across
prior to his
the
trip to
ocean
Japan.
to my home.
For 63 years, until the rightful owners were found, the photo was kept in a safe in his house.
This is the original that was given by Taizo to my father. That's Taizo Sakai.
Steve's father and Sakai met at the northern tip of Iwoto, where the Japanese resisted furiously until the end. Sakai was taken captive by the American troops toward the end of the battle, and Steve's father was his interrogator.
He wrote down on the battle orders what Sakai told him. He asked him what he knew about current events in the war. And Sakai, sort of being funny, he said back in French, "Le journal ne viendait à Iwo Jima." The newspaper does not come to this island. So they were together for approximately 3 hours in this foxhole, speaking French back and forth.
Steve explained that despite the interrogator-captive relationship, the two developed a friendship through conversation in the only language they both knew, French. Then Sakai pulled from his underwear 2 photos, and this is what he said.
These are the most precious things that I have left to me, and I know they will probably take them away from me, so I want to give them to you for safekeeping, because I've come to respect you since we've talked to each other and we've gotten to know each other and we've been able to speak French, and I want to entrust these photographs to you.
Before giving the photos, Sakai wrote something on the back of one of them.
And on the back, Taizo wrote "Sois sage" in French and "O ma douleur."
Iwoto became the site of one of the bloodiest battlefields near the end of the Pacific War. More than 20,000 Japanese soldiers came to fight here. Most of them lost their lives. A mere 1,000 soldiers miraculously survived. However, after more than 60 years, most of them are deceased. Only 10 or 20 at most are said to still be alive. We began an investigation to find out if someone knew this soldier, Taizo Sakai. This is Haruji Mita. On Iwoto, he belonged to the Imperial Japanese Navy Air Force. He's one of the few survivors of what they called Death with Honor Island. Harunori Okoshi fought on Iwoto as a special naval child soldier at the age of 17.
そうですね、もう半世紀過ぎてますからよく覚えてないですね。
海中は陸軍のね、下士官。
Unfortunately, the former soldiers did not recognize the man in the photo. His name was not even registered with the Iwo Jima Association, an organization formed by survivors and the families of the war dead. Sakai's identity could not be established in Japan. We visited the National Archives in the United States to search for possible leads. During World War II, US forces collected every bit of information they could to get whatever advantage they could in the battle over Japan. The files in these boxes contain an enormous amount of information concerning the Japanese prisoners. One of the files was on Taizo Sakai.
And there's his name, Sakai Taizo. Sex, male, height 5 foot 4 inches, weight 60 kilograms, eyes brown, hair black, age 28. He's a corporal in communications. His unit was the communications section of the headquarters company of the 109th Division. This particular thing is the basic record for Taizo Sakai. It's known from other information that he would send messages from Iwo Jima for General Kirobyashi.
The Iwoto Commander-in-Chief, Lieutenant General Tadamichi Kirobyashi. Kirobyashi had ordered his men to build 18 kilometers of underground tunnels in which 20,000 soldiers hid and waited to strike back at the American troops. His name will forever be remembered in military history as the man who tormented the US by holding out for 36 days in a battle that was expected to last only 5. Sakai's duty was to send Lieutenant General Kirobyashi's commands in encrypted codes.
This is one of the few interrogations that we have made by intelligence officers of Mr. Sakai. He knew quite a bit about the codes that the units were using and knew what the contents of the messages were. So the intelligence officers understood that Mr. Sakai might provide them information that they'd be interested in.
Working closely with Lieutenant General Kirobyashi, Sakai had been privy to a wealth of information. His interrogation yielded intelligence on organization, armaments, and military strategies, all in considerable detail. Of course, Sakai also fully knew the combat situation.
こっちが1発撃つ気が10発飛んできますよ。それで制空権を取られてれば、ね、で制海権も取られてるから援軍も来られない、食料の補給もたたると、これで勝てますか戦争。もう袋のネズミなんですから、硫黄島はね、これはもう生きる望みはないです。 全然それ生きる望みってないですよ。
人間一人見れば戦闘機が銃撃しますからね、バーッと。死んだふりしてても動いたら刺されるか撃たれるかですね。
The loss of Iwoto would allow the American forces to use the island as a base for their massive air raids on mainland Japan. The imperial soldiers thus defended their positions on the island tenaciously to delay attacks on the mainland. Unfortunately, given the overwhelmingly superior military forces of the US, the situation was beyond their control. On March 16th, Lieutenant General Kirobyashi decided to wage an all-out battle against the enemy. We have rendered our country hard service. We have no more arrows or shot. How sad to fall. An all-out battle meant the certain death of the entire Iwoto garrison. Sakai surrendered 3 days later.
The prisoner claims to have surrendered eagerly after abandoning his cave-bound companions in the night. He talks volubly, and in the light of known facts, his statements make sense. Hence, information is considered reliable.
Sakai's interrogation report even contained information on his educational background. This is the Athénée Français, a school of foreign languages in Tokyo. The school was founded in 1913 by Frenchman Alexis Joseph Cotte, a professor at the then Tokyo Imperial University. Students included Japanese famous novelists such as Ango Sakaguchi, Junichiro Tanizaki, and Chuya Nakahara. The current director, Etsuji Matsumoto, is 2 years younger than Sakai. The two of them were students here at the same time in the late 1930s. Sakai's interrogation report, put together by the American forces, states that they credit his spirit of cooperation with the enemy to the foreign influences encountered during his Tokyo school days. However, in 1944, the school was forced to close due to increasingly heavier air raids.
戦争を始めた時にはしまったと思いましたね。相手の実力を知らないでアメリカと戦争するのは間違いであると私は確信しておりましたね。 それから戦争が早く終わればいい。いずれにしろ勝つにしろ負けるにしろ早く終わればいいと思ったことも事実ですね。
Eventually, Matsumoto also received his draft card.
お前たちはアメリカが攻めてきたらば戦車の下敷きになって死んでくれと、そんなこと真面目で言うんですかね。びっくりしましたね。国民一般の声で天皇陛下のために死するのが、命を落とすのが名誉であるという、そういう風潮でしたから、一般の人はね、まあそういうふうに思わせられていたのかもしれないな。
軍人なんだからね、それ死ぬまでは戦わなくちゃならんとね、その勝ち負けはもう歴然としてるんだから、ただそれだけの問題だったと思います。他の人もそうだった。ね、何もないです。
もしそこで戦って死ねば日本は助かるんだと、太平洋の防波堤となってこれで戦うんだっていう覚悟で硫黄島にいましたからね、最初から。
Some 30 minutes by ferry from the heart of Seattle lives a man who says he knew the Japanese soldier Taizo Sakai.
Hello.
This is former US Marine Corps officer Richard White.
Happy to see you. Good to see you.
White, who had learned Japanese at the University of Colorado, later joined the US Marine Corps. On Iwato, he served as language officer and was in charge of interrogating Japanese prisoners.
Oh yeah. Sorry, wa Sakai desu. Yeah. That's a nice picture. Kirei na. Sumi ni? Sumi. Yes. Yeah, he was a very bright man. Atama ga ii hito desu.
Sakai's interrogation lasted only a few hours. However, some 60 years later, White says he still vividly remembers the conversation.
He thought that Japan had lost the war. That was clear. Having lost the war, the sooner they gave up, the less bloodshed there'd be. Remember that much. I think he thought the people who were in the caves and came out with bonsai charges were fanatics, kind of crazy, and he was sympathetic with them, but not, he felt that was the wrong thing to do. More I couldn't say.
Sakai decided to cooperate with the American forces. This is Major General Fred Haynes, then a young captain in the US Marine Corps, who also fought on Iwo. In his book, The Lions of Iwo Jima, he wrote as follows regarding Sakai. Sakai told Lieutenant John McCain he knew the whereabouts of Kirobyashi cave.
We were very interested in persuading General Kirobyashi to surrender. So Mr. Sakai helped us locate General Kirobyashi's headquarters, which were deep underground. They were maybe 30 feet under the surface. So we then brought our loudspeakers up and we broadcast to him in Japanese, General Kirobyashi, if you will surrender to us, we will take care of you and all of your soldiers.
There was no sign of Lieutenant General Kirobyashi. Instead, a few Japanese soldiers who had been hiding in the cave were getting ready to meet their fate.
He warned us that they would banzai, and of course they did. They came rushing out of the caves, screaming banzai with bayonets and swords ready, and unfortunately we had to kill them all. It's too bad, but that's the way it was.
On March 26, 1945, 1 week after Sakai had surrendered, the 400 or so Japanese soldiers under Lieutenant General Kirobyashi waged an all-out battle. With that, the last organized Japanese resistance on the island ended. However, some soldiers remained in their underground hideouts for another 3 months, continuing to resist. They were out of bullets, out of drinking water. Still, they refused to surrender.
だからそれはだからねやっぱり恥ずかしめを受けたくない。親兄弟にね肩身の狭い思いはさせたくない俺になってということが心の底にあったと思います。それはだからきれい事じゃなくて心底からやっぱり日本のね兵隊とすればみんな同じだと思いましたよ。
特に我々の場合は海軍特別年少兵って14歳で兵隊入りましたから、そういう教育はもう徹底的に仕込まれましたからね。自分が軍人になった以上は国賊という汚名を被っちゃいけないというそういう考えしかないですね。
Do not suffer the indignity of being a captive. Surrendering to the Americans and becoming a prisoner was strictly forbidden. In this fight against impossible odds, the only option they had left was to die an honourable death.
手榴弾は持ってますから手榴弾をパンとね靴の底へ当ててそれで自爆ですよ。それが一番多かった。俺は何だったらば自分で死んだ方がいい。ね、その一言ですよ。
もう火炎放射器でやられてこう顔が立たれてますからね。でもう見えないんですよね。でお前生きてても苦しむだけだからと自決しろと。それで4組は完全に自決して1組だけは私が戦死っていうか自決させたんですよね。もうほとんど亡くなる人は断末魔っていうよく言いますけど一番多いですよね。ギャーッつって亡くなっていったんですよね。
By then, Sakai was on the east coast of the US, far from the battlefield. This is Fort Hunt Park in Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C. This park used to be a secret interrogation center called Fort Hunt, built by the federal government. During World War II, the US gathered a variety of intelligence from enemy soldiers captured on the front line. Information classified as highly confidential and strategically important was collected here.
This was the camp that was designed and staffed to accommodate the highest-ranking military officers, scientists, and political leaders. They were able to incorporate that being very close to the Pentagon to provide that information very quickly so that it can be incorporated into decision-making.
As a communications officer who had worked under Lieutenant General Kirobyashi, Sakai knew the Japanese communication codes thoroughly. He was placed here as one of the most important prisoners of war. This is a compilation of notes written after the war by Matao Okino, a Navy captain who also stayed at Fort Hunt. In his book, the author mentions that he and Sakai were roommates. We talk, eat lunch, and take walks alone together. It's pleasant. He talks about current trends in the thinking of Japanese soldiers. Back on the battlefield, Japanese soldiers died one after another. Their common last words were, "I'll see you in Yasukuni Shrine." What was on Sakai's mind during his stay at Fort Hunt? Eventually, the Battle of Iwo came to an end. Some 1,000 surviving Japanese soldiers became prisoners. They were demobilized and sent home after the war. By the end of 1945, the year the war ended, Sakai was also demobilized. Later, he and his wife Sumiko had 6 children. Their father used to draw sketches alone after the children had gone to bed.
そしたら兵隊取られちゃった。
私が高校へ入った時に絵をやりたいってすっごく喜んでくれて、油絵の道具を結構貧乏だったのに一式買ってきてくれて、それでもうすごく嬉しかったみたいで、私がやってるともうすっごくうるさいんですよね。それはそうじゃない、こうだってあんまりうるさいんでそれっきり触らなくなって、だからきっと父は、その部分できっと寂しかったんじゃないかなって
教室の前で撮った写真がありましたよね。確かあったんだけど。
After the war, Sakai gave up painting and instead opened a cafe in Tokyo.
あ、これです。アメリカにいた頃にホットケーキを作ったらアメリカの兵隊さんたちがもうすごい喜んで大好評で、何回もこう作ってて頼まれたとは言ってましたけど、やっぱし子供だったからと思ってただ楽しい話として聞いてたんですけど。
テレビ見てましてね、当時ですからね、何でしょう、コンバットとか、あと要は戦争映画ですよね、見てますとあれなんていうんですか、こう肘でほふ前進っていうんですか、ああいうのとかこう見てると違うって頭の位置が高いとかってなんかテレビに指示してましただからやっぱり本当に行ったんだみたいな。
Although Sakai would talk about the war in general, he never mentioned the actual events that he experienced at the front.
その酒井泰三さんが、1945年の3月の19日。
We told former soldiers of Iwoto the actions their fellow soldier Sakai took on the island.
これは本当にね、そんなことをなき方にさ、ね、申し上げちゃね、失礼千万だけどもね、いわゆるね、これはね、国を裏切ったことなんですよね。軍人精神にも大きく逸脱してますからね。だから酒井さんにはそんなことを申し上げちゃ失礼千万だと思います。だけどあえて昔のね、軍隊の規律、軍紀からしてね、これは本当にね、普通の日本人では理解ができなかったですね。
いわゆるそのアメリカ側の資料には結構お父さんの名前は出てくるんですよ。というのも
In the end, we also told Sakai's family the truth about the war experiences their father had never revealed.
つまりアメリカ側から見ると、要は全てのね情報を。
なんかすごいあれですねどういうふうに話したらいいのかしらね。 本人つらかったですよね。本人のさ、こうなんていうのかしら、良心の呵責みたいのがあるんじゃない？
ああ、それなんかそこで本当にああそうなんだって思いましたけど、ああそうだったんだっていうこと、それは、本当に辛い人生だった。ちょっとそう私たちは平和に育っちゃったけども。
捕虜になった時点で、もうそこから、処罰されてしまうというか、戦争というね、20代じゃないですか。若いですよね。本当にまだまだね、ある意味幼い青年じゃないですか。その彼が自分が亡くなるまでずっと背負ったんですよね。
In the sketches Sakai left, there was only one that depicted the war.
Yoto の話で聞いてるのはね、夕方になると生き残った戦友がみんなで車座になってタバコ吸うんだって。だからタバコはすごく愛してたな。いやほらもう激しい戦闘、夕方の一段落つくと、あ今日も一日生き延びたってんで、みんなで祝杯じゃねえけどタバコ一服つけたらホッとするんじゃない？だから死ぬ時まで育っててね、病院でも集中治療室に入れさせられてね、タバコ吸わせろって看護婦に言ってて、当然ダメって言うでしょ。それを看護婦怒鳴りつけて、俺はこのタバコ一本だ戦友のためにするんだなんつって、で一服吸って死んじゃったんだよな。
In 1987, Sakai's life ended at the age of 68. This is what he gave as the reason for his surrender to the American forces. A desire to save the misdirected Japanese common people from the further ravages of a war they cannot win. Sakai chose to surrender in order to end that war as soon as possible. Could it be that he was also already aware that his life would now be haunted by new suffering? The words Sakai wrote on the back of the photo he gave Steve's father. They are believed to be the first line of a poem in Charles Baudelaire's collection, The Flowers of Evil. Be good, O my sorrow, and stay calm. You asked for night to fall. Here it is. A dark atmosphere covers the town. Bringing peace to some, concerns to others. Was Sakai referring to the sorrow of a life filled with remorse, knowing he had betrayed both his fellow soldiers and his country? The discovery of Sakai's true identity, made possible through the information contained in the American archives, revealed a completely different person. Perhaps using the false name Sakai was the only way he knew to hide his true sorrow. For his actual family name was not Sakai, but Sakamoto. After the war, as Mr. Taizo Sakamoto, he lived quietly until his death.